Good evening and welcome to the Warren City School District Board of Education regular meeting. The day is October 24th, 2023, and the time is 6 p.m. At the Warren G. Harding High School cafetorium with live stream available at warrencityschools.org. Will you please rise and salute the flag? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This is a meeting of the Warren City School District Board of Education in public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business and is not to be considered a public community meeting. There is a time for public participation during this meeting as indicated in agenda items 11A and 11B. Ms. Sortino, can you please call the roll?
Yes. Mr. Flanagan?
Here.
Mr. Fowley?
Here.
Mrs. Lamperos?
Here.
Mrs. Patterson?
Here.
And Mr. Walker?
Here. Under agenda item number 3, executive session, under the provisions of Ohio Revised Code 121.22, the Warren City Board of Education will recess to executive session at 6:01 p.m. to discuss letter E, reviewing negotiations for public employees, and letter F, matters required to be kept confidential by state or federal law.
So moved. Second.
Ms. Ortino?
Mrs. Lamperos?
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson?
Yes.
Mr. Flanagan?
Yes.
Mr. Fowley?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes, and the motion is carried. We will resume shortly. Thank you. 6:13, and we're going to resume. I'm sorry. We're going to return from executive session, return from our recess to executive session, and continue with agenda item number 4, communications. Mr. Superintendent.
Thank you. I have 2 communications this evening, actually 3 communications this evening. There will not be a superintendent's report given the nearly 3-hour work session we had last week. I feel that adequately covered many of the things that we were doing in the district, so there will not be a superintendent's report. But I would like to take this time to congratulate and recognize Nate James, who was not only the student athlete of the week last week, but on this Saturday at Madison High School, he competed in the OHSAA Northeast Ohio Division I District Track Meet. And at this event, the top 7 teams and 28 individuals qualify for the OHSAA Northeast Division I Regional Championships. And Nate finished 24th overall and is moving to the regionals. This is a first for our team, and we are very pleased and very happy for Nate, and congratulations to Coach Penny along the way. Other good news I would like to share from a district-wide perspective, that today we received information regarding our 2023 Special Education Annual Rating. The Ohio Department of Education, or the ODU, which I don't think that was how it was on the form, but the current leaders of the State Department of Education, whichever name they go by, has announced our ratings. And of the 4 ratings that are applied to districts based upon their data, Warren City Schools received the meets requirements, which is the highest of the 4 ratings for special education. This was accomplished despite some changes in the data collection and targets that changed throughout the reports, and that all happened midway through the school year. Again, not over the summer months. You're already in midst of the program, and the requirements change. So that worked out well. There will be additional components added to the annual rating beginning with the 2024 report. But again, I'd like to congratulate Patty and her team for their accomplishing the meets requirements rating. Nice job.
Good job.
And that concludes my communications for this evening.
Okay, good news. I like it. Congratulations again to Mr. James, the first in 97 years of Warren G. Harding Senior High School history. Kudos. And also to the state rankings of our special education having meets in those 4 categories. We are excited and proud of our entire administration staff and student body.
Amen.
Go Raiders. Agenda item number 5, adoption of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Mrs. Cortino, can you please call the roll?
Mrs. Lamperos?
Yes.
Mr. Fowley?
Yes.
Mr. Flanagan?
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson?
Yes.
And Mr. Walker?
Yes, and the motion carries. Agenda item number 6, treasurer's report.
Okay, I'd like to do a little presentation for you, a quick one, regarding the changes in property value and how that impacts our property tax and school district revenue. This is a current year for Trumbull County to go through a 6-year reappraisal process. So there are several questions that we need to consider during that process. And that is, what changes in real estate values have occurred and are projected, and how do those value changes impact our tax rates?
Mrs. Scortino,
Yes.
could you either move closer to the mic or could Frank up the speaker?
Okay.
The speaker just thumped.
Yeah, we can't hear from the speaker behind us, Frank.
Is that better?
Yes.
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 Okay.
Thank you.
So, okay, the questions to consider are, what changes in real estate values have occurred and what are we projecting for changes? How do those changes in valuations affect our tax rate? And how do those impact district property tax revenue and also total revenue? And the impact that these property valuations have on the taxpayers. And then finally, I want to show you later in the presentation, illustrate how the district real estate tax revenue impacts our total district revenue, and how district revenue is in comparison to inflation. I think these are all concerns that are out in the community right now with the, news of property valuation increases. So I thought it would be a good time to inform on what this looks like for property owners and for the district. To start off with, it's important to understand how you go about calculating your property taxes. First of all, these are measured in millage, and a mill is equal to $1 of tax for every $1,000 of assessed value. What that would mean is your assessed value is 35% of your appraised value, okay? So a home that is appraised at $100,000 is assessed taxes at $35,000. So 1 mil would cost that taxpayer $35, okay? So in calculating this, you take your home value that it's appraised at, you multiply it by 35%, okay? And then once you have that number, you're going to multiply this by an effective tax rate. An effective tax rate is a tax rate that's been adjusted down due to inflation, and this is all because of House Bill 920, okay, and the reduction factor. So you have a full voted rate that was established at the time that levies were passed, and as property values change, the effective rate comes into place to adjust for that inflation. So if you have property value increases, your tax rate is going to decrease in order to keep it at the level that it was initially voted in at, okay? So you're going to see the assessed value, multiplying that by your effective tax rate, and that gives you your initial tax bill. From that tax bill, you subtract off state paid reimbursements. What those look like is there are 10% rollbacks for non-business credits, and then there's a 2.5% owner-occupied credit. Those come off of your tax bill. There also is the potential to have homestead exemption, and that is a $25,000 exemption credit off of your assessed value or appraised value, then is eligible to taxpayers who are 65 or older and meet low income requirements. So once you have deduct off your credits, then you're looking at your current tax bill. So that's just a brief overview of how someone would go about calculating out and estimating what their tax bill would look like. We have various levy types, and they are affected differently by changes in tax rates, okay? There is, to begin with, an inside millage. This is not voted millage. This is, this can go up to 10 mills. It cannot exceed that. Currently, the district's is 4.7 mills. You can get revenue growth on inside millage, meaning if you have property valuation increases, then you can see additional dollars, additional revenue stemming from that inside millage piece. And this is a single constant rate. The other type of levy is a fixed rate levy, and these are voter approved rates, and they have limited growth in that they use the effective rate to roll back from inflation, that reduction factor that I talked about. So in our district currently, in our Class 1 residential and agricultural, we have a fully voted rate of 34.85 mils, but our effective rate is 24.3 in our Class 1. Our Class 2 commercial and industrial has effective rate of 25.7 mils. So there is a 10 mil difference between what was fully voted in and what the effective rate is that the taxpayers are taxed at. The other kind of levy that is available is fixed sum levies. And these are voted on for an approved amount. It's a fixed sum dollar amount. So you do not see any growth on these types of levies. The rate is adjusted with property values inversely. So as property values increase, your tax rate will decrease because you're only looking to generate a fixed sum. Okay, and we currently have 2 emergency levies that are fixed sum levies. They are total 18.4 mils. One is for $3.9 million in fixed sum revenue, and that's at a current millage of 12.4. And then we also have a $1.9 million levy that is currently at 6 mils. Now, this is before considering any property valuations because we haven't received what our property values will look like yet. That usually comes to us from the county auditor in January of 2024. In addition to these levies, we also have a bond levy and a permanent improvement levy. Those came into place when we built the new school buildings. Those, the bond levy is currently at 6.05 mils. That is used to generate what we set tax rates to generate what we need to meet our debt payments on those bonds. Okay, and then the permanent improvement levy is a 1 mil levy that needed to be passed for the facilities to have preventative maintenance and any permanent improvements needed to be maintained and sustainable. So you can see as property values increase, you know, as I talked about before, we have that House Bill 920 adjustment factor for inflation. So as property values increase, does that necessarily mean your taxes are going to increase? Because those tax rates are going down as our property values are increasing, whether it be to generate a fixed sum or to use the effective rate to adjust for the inflation factor. So in essence, school districts' real estate property tax revenue can really remain pretty flat. The voted fixed rate taxes decrease until a school district reaches what they call a millage floor, and that is a 20 mil floor. So as property taxes are increasing and that effective rate is bringing the tax rate down, they cannot decrease below 20 mils. Some historic data on what our property tax rates has looked like in Class 1 residential. You can see in years 13 through 19, we were decreasing. Our property taxes were decreasing. In 2020, there was a 7% increase, and that was when we had triennial update. So we saw also that property values were, I'm sorry, this is the property values. So we saw that the property values increased about 7% in 2020 with the triennial update. In 2023, you know, we haven't gotten our full impact of what the property valuation increase is going to be. I'm currently modeling just upon some data, market data, and information that I've looked at in terms of properties throughout the city and seeing where they're at and trying to come up with an average. And I looked at modeling a 34% increase in property values overall. What that does, and to your right, you can see in the red, you have a decrease of 20% in property tax rates. So although we're looking at a 34% property value increase, you're seeing a 20% decrease in the tax rates. The projected district tax values versus tax rates, it's really hard at this time to project out what the valuations are going to look like moving forward, because have we, reached this big peak and high, and then the market's going to shift, and, are we going to continue to see property values increase, or are we going to see houses come back down? So in 2026, we will have a triennial update again. So based upon average experiences in previous triennial updates, that's where I've looked to say, well, we typically see an increase, but I don't think based upon such a large increase as we've had with the reappraisal that increase would be as high as we've typically seen. So we're projecting about a 5% increase in valuations. However, then on that flip side of it with the tax rates, that'll cause about a 4% decrease in tax rates to compensate for the increase in your property values. This shows you here district's property tax rates, a year-over-year change in the general fund property tax rates. So in the bottom line, in the blue, is your fixed sum levies from 13 to 2027. You can see those have relatively remained flat as well, because that's a fixed sum levy. You will see some fluctuation in terms of collections. There could be delinquencies collected in one year versus the other. So that is the slight changes you'll see. The red line is the millage floor, and that's at 20 mills. And then the green line up top is our full voted rate, okay? And the gray line that is right above the red line is our fixed rate levy effective rates. So you can see the gap between the green and the gray in terms of what those levies were voted in at versus what they're taxed at currently. And you can also see from this illustration, as property values increase, that brings our rates down closer to that 20 mil floor. The impact that on district total revenue and local real estate revenue, the line here in orange represents total real estate revenue. As you can see, from 2012 through projected through 2028, that remains relatively flat. The total operating revenue is your blue line. So in essence, we are, in 2023 looking at a little over 70 million in total revenue. We only are bringing in 11 million in real estate revenue to the general fund, okay? District revenue versus inflation. You can look at this chart on the 10-year historical average annual change in revenue compared to the inflation. average annual growth in local property tax revenue in the gray is 0.95%. It's less than 1% average growth over 10 years. Okay. The average annual decrease in total revenue has been 1.66%. That's in blue. The annual inflation rate is 6.12%. So our property tax revenue is not increasing nearly at the rate that inflation is increasing, and overall, our average annual revenue has decreased. The 5-year projected average annual change in revenue compared to inflation, you can see our average annual growth in gray for property tax revenue is 0.53%, 0.5%. Our average annual growth in total revenue is 2.67%, and that is mainly due to the new funding formula that we've received from the state. And then the annual inflation rate is 3.66%. So we are still, our revenues are not exceeding what inflation is. One of the things that is important to understand here when we talk about property tax and property valuation increases and the impact that that has on the state funding formula, okay? So as property values increase within a district, one of the measures of your state funding formula and the state share of that base cost that they fund you to educate students is property wealth and taxpayer wealth, okay? So as our property values increase, that causes the state share of the funding formula to decrease, puts more responsibility on the local taxpayer. Therefore, if there were any increase that stemmed from property valuations and tax rates increasing, you could potentially on the other side of it see a decrease in your revenue from the state share. Finally, I just wanted to illustrate what our daily cost is, and in comparison to that, what portion of that the local taxpayer pays compared to the state share of that. So $84 per pupil is what we are assuming for a 180-day school year. Only 12% of that is the resident property owner's portion. 88% of that is from the state funding formula. So just wanted to reiterate as well that we have not gone to the taxpayers for any additional dollars since 1994. We currently are not going to the taxpayers for any additional dollars. The agenda tonight is a resolution to place on the ballot a renewal of our fixed sum levy that expires in 2023. We will be looking to put that on the ballot in March of 2024. So, any questions? It's very complicated, but I guess it's important for the taxpayers to understand, just because their values are going up doesn't mean they're going to pay an exorbitant amount in new taxes.
Correct.
Exactly. And yes, while it is a complicated subject, I will say thank you for making it as plain English as I think you possibly could for us on the board as well as the general public. And I think it is key for our constituents to understand that not only, yes, have we not asked for, as a board, as a district, any new money, since 1994. We're able to do, under your direction, under our superintendent's direction, a lot, dealing with the same pay that we've gotten locally since 1994, but that it is still crucial pay that we need to continue to educate our children and to be a service to this community. And by no means are you all wasting money. You're able to squeeze blood from a turnip, if you ask me. So I thank you for that. Yeah. Anyone else?
Karen, on the unnumbered page, 3 from the back, the substantial drop in revenue recorded between 2021 and 2022, that is an accounting situation, how the money for vouchers is accounted for?
There were certain things we received in relation to COVID.
Okay.
I'm going to give an example of Bureau of Workers' Comp refund that, was in one year and not the other.
Okay, so there were one-year events that affected that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that. Anyone else? No? Does that conclude your report?
That's it.
All right. Thank you so much, Ms. Sortino, for that. Very insightful. And I don't believe we have a superintendent's report as stated earlier, correct? All right. So we're going to move to agenda item number 8, Board of Education Committee reports, athletics. All right. Did you want to say anything at all?
I do, yeah. I would just like to recognize one of our Harding grads, Mr. Bill White, who is nominated for the 2024 Major League Baseball Hall of Fame Contemporary Era Ballot for managers, executives, and umpires.
Excellent.
Yeah, it's very, very, very nice. The National, if I can just read a little bit, the National Baseball Hall of Fame announced the 8-person ballot made up of managers, executives, and umpires that will be considered by its Contemporary Baseball Era Committee for Hall of Fame election as part of the class of 2024. So he was one of 8. The results of the Contemporary Baseball Era Committee vote will be announced live on MLB's network, MLB Tonight at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time on Sunday, December 3rd. And any candidate who receives votes on 75% of the ballots cast by the committee will earn election to the National Baseball Hall of Fame and will be inducted in Cooperstown on July 21st, 2024. And just a little bit about Mr. Bill White. He graduated from Warren G. Harding High School in 1952 and was both president and salutatorian of his class. He attended Hiram College from 53 to 55. And in 1989, he was elected president, the first African-American president of the National League to replace Bart Giamatti, who succeeded Peter Uberoth as commissioner. He served as the National League president until he retired in '94, and he also became a first full-time sportscaster after his playing career ended in 1969 and was the play-by-play and color analyst for the New York Yankees television and radio broadcasts for 18 years. Had a very successful career. We certainly are proud of him. He is a member of our Alumni Hall of Fame as well. And so I think just on behalf of the school district and the school board, we're very proud of him. Best wishes, and we hope that he is officially selected, but not being nominated is quite an honor as well.
Yes, yes. Kudos to Mr. Bill White. Finance and advisory? Finance advisory, sorry? No report?
No report.
Yes. We can make reference to the treasurer's report just now.
Yeah.
Board policies and guidelines?
We just want to report that we had a great meeting with our superintendent and our treasurer, Patrick and I, and you'll see our first readings on our agenda tonight, and if you have any questions, we'll be prepared to answer at our next meeting and our second reading.
Okay, thank you for that. Legislative liaisons?
Oh, I suppose what I will say is that Mrs. Limperos and I watch Columbus closely, and it's pretty hard without a scorecard to tell you what has a stay, a restraining order, or has been lifted, or the governor thinks is a law, and the Supreme Court of Ohio thinks maybe it's constitutional, and maybe that it isn't. So we watch, yeah, we watch, we listen, and we have nothing to report because none of it's final.
There's been no movement.
Yes, of course, of course. And TCTC Board Representative.
I have nothing to report this meeting.
Okay. Agenda item number 9, I don't believe we have anything under old business. Number 10, I don't believe there's anything under new business. Do we have anybody signed up for public participation on an agenda item? So 11A, there is no one signed up. Let us move to page number 3. Agenda item number 1, Treasurer's recommendations. Mr. Fowley?
Treasurer's recommendations. Minutes. It is recommended the resolution listed below regarding the September 26th, 2023 board minutes be approved as submitted.
Second.
Ms. Sortino, is there any questions or discussion on the item? Ms. Sortino, can you please call the roll?
Mr. Fowley?
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos?
Yes.
Mr. Flanagan?
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson?
Yes.
And Mr. Walker?
Yes, and the motion carries.
And Mr. Walker, on the next item, it should say September rather than August. There's a error in that.
Oh, okay, no problem. Thank you for that.
I'll note that.
Duly noted.
Thank you.
On page 4, monthly financial statement. Ms. Lamperos?
Monthly financial statement. It is recommended the resolution listed below regarding a September 2023 financial statement and short-term investments made by the treasurer during September 2023, Exhibit A, pages 46 to 47, be approved as submitted.
Second.
Any questions or discussion on the motion? Just making a note that, as the treasurer just pointed out, this should read September as opposed to August. Ms. Cortino, can you please call the roll?
Mrs. Lamperos?
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson?
Yes.
Mr. Flanagan?
Yes.
Mr. Fowley?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes, and the motion carries. Page 6, item number 3, Ms. Patterson.
The 2023-24 co-curricular budget and purpose statements. It is recommended that the resolution listed below establishing 2023-24 co-curricular budget and purpose statements be approved as submitted.
Second.
Any question or discussion on the item? If not, Ms. Sortino?
Mrs. Patterson?
Yes.
Mr. Flanagan?
Yes.
Mr. Fowley?
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes, and the motion carries. Page 7, item number 4, Mr. Flanagan.
Revised appropriation budgets. It is recommended the resolution listed below for revised appropriation budgets, A, be approved as submitted.
Second.
Any questions or discussion on the item? If not, Ms. Sortino?
Mr. Flanagan?
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos?
Yes.
Mr. Fowley?
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes, and the motion carries. Page 8, item number 5, Mr. Fowley.
Approve the application, accept the grant, and approve the grant appropriations. It is recommended the resolution listed below to approve the application, accept the grant, and approve grant appropriations, item A, be approved as submitted.
Second.
Any questions or discussion on the item? If not, Ms. Sortino?
Mr. Fowley?
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson?
Yes.
Mr. Flanagan?
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes, and the motion carries. Page 9, item number 1, Ms. Lamperos.
Superintendent's recommendations, agreements, contracts, and/or leases. It is recommended the resolution listed below entering into agreements, contracts, and/or leases A and B be approved as submitted.
Second.
Any questions or discussion on the item? If not, Ms. Sortino?
Mrs. Lamperos?
Yes.
Mr. Flanagan?
Yes.
Mr. Fowley?
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes, and the motion carries. Page 10, item number 2, Mrs. Patterson.
Recommendation of the CMR to accept bids for its construction project. It is recommended the resolution listed below regarding approving the recommendation of the CMR to accept the bids for its construction project be approved as submitted.
Second.
Are there any questions or discussion on the item?
The panels are currently going on. They look very nice.
Yes, yes. Panels are currently going on. Do we, I believe this is the last of our bids for this project.
Yes.
For a while. If not, go ahead, Ms. Sortino, and please call the roll.
Mrs. Patterson?
Yes.
Mr. Flanagan?
Yes.
Mr. Fowley?
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes, and the motion carries. Page 12, item 3, Mr. Flanagan.
Board policies, first reading. It is recommended the resolution listed below regarding the adoption of board policies A through R, first reading, be approved as submitted.
Second.
Are there any questions or discussion on the item?
We're not going to say anything.
Just thank you to our colleagues.
thank you.
For their work on this.
Yes. Thank you very much for that work. If not, Ms. Sortino, can you please call the roll?
Mr. Flanagan?
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson?
Yes.
Mr. Fowley?
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes, and the motion carries. Agenda, page number 14, item number 4, Mr. Fowley.
Memorandum of Understanding between the Warren City School District Board of Education and the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 95. It is recommended the resolution listed below be approved as submitted.
Second.
Any question or discussion on the item? If not, Ms. Sortino?
Mr. Fowley?
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos?
Yes.
Mr. Flanagan?
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes, and the motion carries. Page 15, item number 5, Mrs. Lamperos.
Field trip. It is recommended the resolution listed below regarding field trip A be approved as submitted, and this is for our robotics first team participants. Dates of the trip, November 4, returning the November 5. They'll be going to Ontario, Canada. And good luck to the team.
Second.
Any questions or discussion? If not, Ms. Sortino?
Mrs. Lamperos?
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson?
Yes.
Mr. Flanagan?
Yes.
Mr. Fowley?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes, and good luck to the robotics team. Page number 10, excuse me, 16, page number 16. Item number 6, Mrs. Patterson.
The Ohio Department of Education certification for Ohio Teachers Evaluation System and Ohio Principal Evaluation System. It is recommended the resolution listed below regarding the Ohio Department of Education certification for credentialed Ohio Teachers Evaluation System and Ohio Principals Evaluation Evaluators be approved as submitted.
Second.
Any questions or discussion on the item? If not, Ms. Lamperos? I'm sorry, Ms. Cortina.
I've been elevated.
Mrs. Patterson?
Yes.
Mr. Flanagan?
Yes.
Mr. Fowley?
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos?
Yes.
And Mr. Walker?
Yes, and the motion carries. Sorry about that. Page number 17, item number 7. Now I forget, where was that? Was that Ms. Patterson? Mr. Flanagan, excuse me.
Tuition reimbursement. It is recommended the resolution listed below for tuition reimbursement be approved as submitted.
Second.
Any questions or discussion on the item? If not, Ms. Sortino.
Mr. Flanagan?
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos?
Yes.
Mr. Fowley?
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes, and the motion carries. Page 18, item number 8, Mr. Fowley.
The best one. Acceptance of gifts. It is recommended the resolution listed below regarding acceptance of gifts be approved as submitted. And we wish to thank and read all our donors: Lee DiGiacomo, to McGuffey Pre-K 8, $100, Game Changers, my good friend Mikey, to Warren City Schools, 24 paint party tickets, $720, Terry Miller and family, in memory of Ernestine Miller, to McGuffey Pre-K through 8, books and hygiene personal items valued at $3,500. Nova Coffee, to the school district, 100 free donut coupons, estimated value $200. St. Mark's Church, to the Jefferson Raider Pantry, personal hygiene items, estimated value $400. Tawakis Johnson, Shea Emergency, to the Jefferson Raider Program, personal hygiene items, estimated value 325 items. And on to page 2, the Warren Junior Women's League, to the Jefferson Raider Pantry, handmade winter hats, estimated value $75. and DeWarn Junior Women's League to the Willard Raider Pantry, winter hats and food items. Estimated value, $600. The school board wishes to thank all our donors
Yes.
very, very, very much.
Yeah.
Yes.
Second.
Any questions or discussion on the item? I would like to point out that not only do we have 8 donors from the community, but every one of our buildings was represented in receiving gifts. So again, thank you to our contributors and throughout the community who continue to be unwavering in your support of our students. Thank you. Ms. Cortina?
Mr. Fally?
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson?
Yes.
Mr. Flanagan?
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes, and the motion carries. Page number 20, item number 9, personnel recommendations. Mrs. Lamperos?
Personnel recommendations. It is recommended the resolution listed below regarding personnel items A through O be approved as submitted, and that will take you through to page 41.
Second.
Are there any questions or discussions on the item? If not, Ms. Sortino, can you please call the roll?
Mrs. Lamperos?
Yes.
Mr. Fally?
Yes.
Mr. Flanagan?
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes, and the motion does carry. Page number 42, item number 1, Mrs. Patterson?
The board's recommendations. Determining to submit to the electors of the school district the question of the renewal of an existing tax levy pursuant to sections 5705.194 to 5705.197 of the revised code. It is recommended the resolution listed below, determining to submit to the electors of the school district the question of the renewal of an existing tax levy pursuant to sections 5705.194 to 5705.197 of the revised code be approved as submitted.
Second.
Are there any questions or discussion on the motion?
Just the statement that regardless of the increase in property value, this tax levy will bring in no additional dollars, and it will not result in a single cent of increase to any homeowner.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yes, as presented in Ms. Sortino's presentation. No homeowner will see new money coming out from this. If there is no other discussion, Ms. Sortino?
Mrs. Patterson?
Yes.
Mr. Flanagan?
Yes.
Mr. Fally?
Yes.
Mrs. Lamperos?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes, and the motion carries. Page number 45, item number 11B, public participation. I don't believe we have anyone signed up. There's no need for executive session as we've already had one. So if that be all, and item number 14, adjournment. Just
So moved.
Second.
let the item reflect, let the record reflect the time is 6:57 p.m. Ms. Cortino, can you please call the roll?
Mrs. Lamperos?
Yes.
Mr. Fally?
Yes.
Mr. Flanagan?
Yes.
Mrs. Patterson?
Yes.
And Mr. Walker?
Yes, and the motion carries. Thank you all for your time and your consideration this night. Have a good evening.